Years ago, I had this dumb idea for a newspaper that would exclusively present facts as best as we could report them. Now, facts are always going to be subject to human interpretation, but my goal was to produce a news source that had as little opinion as possible, which I've since learned is utterly a terrible business model, because the thing that attracts people to the media outlets that they love is the opinion, and it's the slant that those media outlets have. So whether you're a Republican or a conservative or who knows what, the chances are that you read the news and media outlets that you do because they validate a feeling that you have about the world, and their opinions are aligned with yours. So just presenting the facts is just not very interesting. And along those lines, if you're just presenting facts in your copy, you're not going to do a very good job keeping people hooked. You want to present your facts with a degree of emotion. You want to ask yourself, how can your words create that sort of punched in the gut feel, like, wow, like, oh my God, like, what is going on here? Or the blinking effect of like, whoa, like, I can't believe I'm watching this right now, as my friend Chris Haddad likes to say. So how are you going to do this? Well, remember that you want to write to your prospects' fears and desires, the things that are so deep inside of them that they just can't escape them. If you are just writing to top level ideas of, hey, here's this kind of nice benefit that you're going to get, or here's an outcome you're going to have, that can work. But really, let's look at vary for an example. If we say, hey, you're going to have 700 images from your wedding, that's not bad. But if we say something along the lines of, hey, you might miss some of the best moments from the most important days of your life, now we're starting to get into writing to our prospects' fears and primal desires. So remember our primary, secondary, and tertiary benefits. Remember to talk to those primary desires and those primary fears deep in the reptilian brain. That's going to help you write much more emotional copy. Secondly, you want to layer in emotional words. So these are the words that, if Tolstoy was reading your writing, he might scoff at a bit, or perhaps not, who knows. Words like shocking or rabid or gut-wrenching or elated. These are, words that can really conjure up emotions and can make your prospect or your avatar, your prospect feel more connected to you, and just pull them into the letter more. They're gonna feel what you feel. This is what we're talking about when we say visceral writing. Now we also want to measure that against the sophistication of our avatar. If our avatar is not used to hearing those sort of words as part of their day-to-day dialogue, then maybe we want to tone them down a little bit. This is just going to depend on who your avatar is and who you're writing to. But let me give you an example for how we would do this and why it's so important to eliminate unnecessary words. So using this awful sentence from earlier, so how did I go from getting nauseous just to the thought of having to go up and talk to a cute woman? There's a lot of words there. We're taking up a lot of space with them. Remember, we changed that to, so how did I go from getting nauseous at the thought of approaching a woman? Let's add a word. We've replaced all the just from and having to go up to and talk to we've replaced all those words with much simpler words. Now we're going to add a word to make the sentence even more powerful. We'll say, so how did I go from getting seasick nauseous? Or how did I go from getting as nauseous as if I was out at sea? Or how did I go from getting an airplane level of nausea just from the thought of approaching, and again, we're getting rid of just from the thought. But you see what we're trying to do here is we're trying to add an additional word in front of nauseous to even increase the impact and increase the visceralness and visualness of that word. So I kind of like, so how did I go from getting seasick levels of nauseousness? Is that a word? I'd have to work this one around a little bit. But that's a good example of how we want to replace crappy, unnecessary words in our sentences and replace them with visual, visceral words that are going to make the sentence much more punchy and give people a visual to grab onto as they're listening or as they're reading through it. That's one of those emotional words right there. So that's that one. The next point on writing with emotion is Stories are a vehicle for emotions and feelings. So we've talked about this a little bit already. We don't want to get caught up in boring facts when we're telling our stories. It doesn't have to be this, then this, and then this. We want to create feelings in our prospect's body. We want our prospect to experience these things viscerally and visually when we're explaining them, and not just as this happened, then this happened, then this happened. We've talked about this a little bit before. We want to put readers in the moment. We want to create vivid experiences with our words, especially when we're doing our future projections. So whenever we're talking about things that are going to happen in the future, we really want to put our prospect there, and we want to make them feel like, oh man, this is going to be my life. So how can we use words and language to create that? Well, again, it's that sort of vivid, emotional type of language that is going to do that, and it's not by just talking about facts. Finally, we can use similes and metaphors. Similes and metaphors are fantastic. We're going to call them out and highlight them in some of our pieces of copy that we're going to have for you to break down. But a good example of a simile or a metaphor would be dating felt like a labyrinth. Like there were a million ways to get it wrong and only one way to get it right. Or relationships felt like a minefield, like one wrong move and I'd get my leg blown off. So these are good examples of similes and metaphors, and the more that you can layer those in, let's remember we can get some of those from our prospects. The more that you can layer those in, the more emotion your sales letter will have, and the more that you'll connect with your audience. So that is how to write with emotion. Let's finally close off by talking about how to present ideas. So this whole course has largely been about how to present ideas. We've talked about presenting ideas clearly. But I want to give you a few more examples of how to present great ideas and some key points that you can use to present ideas. There are 6 key points of presenting ideas well. Some of this you've heard before, but I want to get it all in one section where we talk about if you just had to say, hey, how do I present ideas well? This is the section. Let's review this. Point 1. Great offers and sales letters have one and only one big idea. You should not have more than one big idea in your sales letter. This is a sales letter about X. Don't get away from X. This is a speech about X. This is a product about X. Do not get away from X. Have one big idea and leave it at that. Point 2 is what I call the law of work. So you've been hearing a little bit about this already. This is something that Garfinkel scolded me on time and time again from the very first time that we had our first session, and it has only, it's obviously tapered off a lot since then. In fact, I would say that I am now scolding my copywriters about this one more and more. So the law of work is this, is that the more dots that your prospect has to connect between your statement and his or her outcomes, the fewer sales that you make. So let's repeat that again. The more dots that your prospect has to connect between your statements and his or her outcomes, the fewer sales you make. So if you imagine that your promise is here and the outcome that your prospect wants is here, if they have to connect a lot of dots to get to your promise in the sense of intuiting things that you're saying or trying to dissect ideas or ideas that aren't being explained clearly, if your mechanism isn't clear, if your promise isn't super clear, then you're going to lose prospects because now it takes them work to understand how what you're doing is going to deliver the result that they want in their life. So that's obviously not what we want for them. We want them to do as little work as possible. And that is the point of writing good copy, is to present your ideas so clearly and to draw conclusions for your prospects, to straw man things, to knock ideas down, to help shape their beliefs and frame things so that your prospects can, by the time you get to your promise, say, yes, this is exactly what I need. They've done all the work for me. All I need to do is click buy and implement what they have. So that is the important point, is the more work that your prospect has to do to figure out, will this work for me, the less sales you will make, the fewer sales you make. So, the point there is without, and here's another part of the law of work. With outcomes, the outcomes and the promises that you are making. How can you go from intuitive to obvious, and then from obvious to bashing your prospect over the head? And I know this sounds silly, but let's talk about it in a little bit of depth because it's actually quite important. Let's say that an outcome that we're promising is that you'll have more confidence and women will love you. So that's not a bad outcome. But that doesn't necessarily drive directly to that primary benefit he wants of more sex or a better relationship. So let's say that the outcome I'm promising is you'll lose some weight. That's a pretty vague promise, or let's just say you'll feel better about yourself every day. That's a pretty vague promise. What does that actually mean? How does that relate to the specific outcome? So, when you put this in use, you'll lose so much weight that you'll be able to fit into those clothes that you used to wear in college. That's a specific outcome. That's, obvious. It's almost bashing them over the head with it. When you, buy this product, you'll feel so much better that you'll step out of the house every day with a smile on your face and a spring in your step. That's, again, specific. It is bashing them over the head with the idea of what will happen to them. So we don't want to leave things to the prospect's intuition if we don't have to. We want to make these claims about what is going to happen for them, and we want those claims to be big and bold and specific so that they don't have to do the work themselves to say, oh, if I had that, I guess I could see myself doing this thing or that thing over there too. That's what we want to avoid. We want to drive towards this thing or that thing that they actually want to achieve. And we do that by understanding our avatar in the market. And then we just come directly at it and we say, this is what you will get. So we want our outcomes and our promises to go from intuitive to obvious, and then from obvious to bashing them over the head. Now, we've already talked about similes and metaphors. I want to include them in this section again because they are an important way to present ideas. We want to create that aha moment. We want to create that, wow, I feel that way too moment. And if you don't use similes and metaphors, then you don't get the chance to demonstrate that to your prospect. And usually we'll use similes and metaphors in two different ways. We'll use them to either explain difficult concepts or to relate feelings. So in the example of the desire system, we use a metaphor of the yawn. So we talk, the mechanism in the desire system is mirror neurons. You can make someone feel for you the way you're feeling towards them by having, because people have mirror neurons in their brains, and it's possible to transfer your emotions and your feelings vis-a-vis mirror neurons. And so the mechanism that or the metaphor that we use to describe this is the yawn. If you've ever yawned, or you've copied someone's yawn, which perhaps you did just now, that's because of mirror neurons. So we're using this metaphor to explain a difficult concept, and the metaphor is one that's very obvious. And we even we tried some leads with that, and I think our winning lead at this moment goes something like, a simple yawn. You never know it, but the yawn holds the key to turning a woman on in just seconds. So we're trying to introduce this concept right away and use the metaphor to link it to an idea and a big idea that they are going to buy into and that they might want. So that's one way that you can explain difficult concepts, use metaphors and similes. The other one is to relate feelings. So we've talked about this a lot up to this point. Many of the metaphors I've used about dating being a labyrinth or relationships being a minefield, that's where if you use metaphors in that capacity, you're going to get that, oh yeah, this person feels just like me feedback from your prospects, and that's a great thing to be getting. Another key element of presenting ideas is repeating the big idea. You want to ask yourself, how often can you say the same thing in different ways? You want to get this idea into their mind. So I know it may seem strange, but as you look through some of our copy, you'll see that we try to repeat the big idea again and again. We try to put it in the start and the middle and at the end. We're so frequently trying to talk about this big idea and specifically the big promise that we're making. So the point is that, maybe you've heard this, it takes 7 points of exposure before you become sort of warmed up to an idea or a person. So the more quickly that we can hit those 7 points and the more times that we can get that big idea in there, the better. So how often can you say the same thing in different ways throughout your speech or your sales copy or what have you that you're presenting? And the final thing that you want to ask yourself about presenting ideas is whether you want to tune into someone's selfish nature or their high purpose nature. We've talked about this earlier. Are you trying to go towards the sort of greedy 7 deadly sins with your promises, or are you trying to offer someone a little bit more moral virtue and a feeling of elevation as a result of purchasing your product? It's really going to depend on your avatar and your promise, and that's going to come down to you and your market research. But as I've said before, it's usually best to mix in some selfish promises along with some higher order promises so that your prospect has the opportunity to feel both, hey, I'm going to be learning great stuff and I'm going to be improving the world with this and making everybody's lives better, and I'm going to be selfishly fulfilling some of my own desires and some of my own needs with this. So that is, those are the big key points behind presenting ideas, and that is what we have on writing copy. So a lot of what you're going to learn is going to be in the workbooks and in the worksheets, but these principles, it's interesting, to close up on this, these principles are timeless when it comes to presenting ideas and writing good copy, and they're principles that you have the opportunity to use to the extent of your desire to work and make them work for you. So the first time that you write a piece of sales copy, you'll probably use a whole lot of words like just and but and that. And it's going to be up to you whether you want to put that out in the world or whether you want to spend the time doing a pass, removing words like that. You might repeat the wrong ideas. You might not have big ideas in there enough. You might lack coherency, or you might not be using enough similes and metaphors. These are things that you can work on over time, and that a coach is going to look at your piece of sales literature and say, yeah, you should use this here and get rid of that there. The templates are out there. You can look at them and you can learn from them. So how good you get at this is going to depend on the amount of work that you're willing to put into it. And if you are comfortable putting a piece of copy into the world that violates some of the principles we just discussed, then that's entirely up to you. But what I would recommend is going through the worksheets and doing passes of your copy to make sure that you are not violating these principles. And the time you spend on it now is going to pay off extensively down the road, whether it's 6 months or a year or 5 years from now, when you've learned the right passes to do at the start and you take the time right now to try to get your writing correct. I know that's not an easy thing to hear because everybody would love to just push something out in the world and be done with it. But again, this course and the promise was that you can turn your ideas and words into money, and you'll do it as quickly as possible. But certainly I want to teach you to do it with quality, and I want to make sure that you are set up for success. So everything we covered there is going to be the foundations of great copywriting, and it's up to you how much you want to dive into it and make it work for yourself. So with that, we are going to close this section off, and we're going to head to our final section of the official course, which talks about going from 0 to live. Man, we got a good one here. And by the time we record this one, I will be back with a new haircut and probably a new shirt.